VR really needs a great RPG title, and here's how we can make the best one. Okay everybody, and welcome back. So I've been playing video games for over 30 years. That is a true statement. And I've been reviewing VR games, not for too long now, but in the last 4 months, I've reviewed 34 games. I've played games on every single system, from Nintendo to PlayStation 4 and everything in between. And I've always had a huge love of games. I love talking about them and just thinking about them and analyzing every little aspect. And I think I know what we need in a future VR title. Okay guys, this is gonna be a bit of a ramble video. I didn't plan anything, but I've been thinking about a lot of these elements for a long time. If you end up enjoying this content, go ahead, give it a thumbs up, maybe subscribe, ding the bell, and give me some feedback. Do you like this style of video, or am I just wasting time? So I'm gonna break down a couple items that we need to include in our VR game, and then I'm just gonna set the landscape of what this game would be. A lot of this is gonna come down to taking existing game mechanics and just pumping them up for the VR world. How can you make them better in VR? One thing that VR developers need to do is just double down on what makes VR amazing. That is immersion, presence, and these unique mechanics we cannot get anywhere else. I mean, it's one thing to click a trigger and swing a sword, or to pull something off your back and start slicing enemies.
How do you hand something from one player to another?
Bring up your inventory screen. Control I.
Okay.
Now, immersion and presence go hand in hand with role-playing titles. And a great atmosphere for VR games is both sci-fi and fantasy. Anyone who's ever played anything from Dungeons & Dragons to the latest VR games, they want the highest fidelity. But in truth, they really want to be there. They want to experience that game. Could you imagine stepping foot into the God of World environment and actually looking at Kratos face to face, or the giant sea serpent, or any of the other multitude of creatures in between? When you sat down and played a pen and paper role-playing game like Dungeons & Dragons, you wanted to be that player, you wanted to be in that world, you wanted to take on that role. Well, VR is the only thing that actually gives you that opportunity. So stepping into this fantasy or sci-fi world, we need to give the player a couple options that go hand in hand with presence and immersion. And that's one, character creation. If you're taking on a role, you want to look the look. And there's been games in the past, one I always like to talk about is APB Reloaded, which had the most amazing character creation system, and one that evolves over time. So as you made money, you can actually go out and buy more tattoos, or new clothes, and that's something that needs to be implemented in a game. Now we see something similar on a smaller scale in Rec Room, and that's going to be a title I keep coming back to in this video. But the difference between character creation and items in Rec Room to APB Reloaded is night and day. We could also more deeply engage our players with amazing art items and in-game objects. How often have you found a high-level weapon in a video game and it just looks like everything else, and it's, got a purple name or something similar? Well, in VR, you get to pull out that weapon and it's flaming or whatever and show it to your friends and be like, look what I found. Again, that's not something you can really do in any other video game. Yes, a lot of games will let you go into your inventory, click something and get a picture of it, and it's cool. You get to admire the artwork, but when it's in your hand and you're swinging it around, and just imagine you step into your fantasy pub and you have this amazing sparkling armor, and there's a bunch of low-level noobs that kind of drop their jaws as you walk in. Again, that's immersion, that's a presence, that's what we want to see in VR. And how many times have you guys taken out your weapons in a VR game and the first thing you do is bang your sword against your shield? That's what we want to see. From games like Beat Saber all the way to Pavlov, we know how amazing good VR mechanics can feel. There's no way a VR RPG can get away with wet noodle melee weapons. Another example of this is just traversing the environment. A lot of MMOs and some other games will give you a little achievement or an XP bonus just for traveling throughout the world. That's great, but it's boring and you really don't get anything out of it. But VR, on the other hand, you can create some amazing vistas. And there's plenty of games where you go into either a nexus, a hub, or a cliff, and you just stop in VR and look around, and you're like, this is amazing. Now just imagine what could be done with a sci-fi game or a fantasy game. You could be overlooking some amazing lava pit as you're, going into hunt down some creature that's in a volcano. Or you can make your way to some spaceport and look out the window and there's a space battle going on. And these are the moments where it's a XYZ location found, achievement unlocked, or XP bonus. So not only are you rewarding the player in-game, but you're giving them a reason to actually seek out these things, not just mindlessly play. So we've started in a sci-fi or fantasy world with amazing ability to create a character to look any way we like. We're rewarded based on things we actually find in the game because they become real status symbols that people can visually see in a multiplayer environment. That's right, there is such a social aspect to VR that we really need to make sure that's utilized also. Even a simple game like Rec Room that's super cartoony, you can take an old dude like me, throw him in that game, and 10 minutes later I'm acting like a little kid because I'm taking on the role of what the environment is pretty much pushing me towards. Move us into level design. VR has this amazing ability to set the tone by the environment. Yes, a lot of games can be scary and creepy on a traditional flat screen, but nothing is quite like actually being there. This gives you the ability to drastically change the tone from level to level and suit the playstyle of all your different characters. If we're thinking of a traditional D&D game, well, you can have dimly lit environments where a roguelike character can take the lead, or more fantasy-based environments where someone like a magic user would have an edge because they just have a little bit more information about their environment. They're more attuned to magic than any of the other characters. And this is just one more level of depth that we wouldn't see in a traditional game. I mean, a lot of these elements, like I said, have been used before in other games, but you can utilize them so much better in VR. But now we're going down the rabbit hole of, well, what type of game is this? How does it play? We have the problem of VR game length, which is a consistent problem, replayability, all those issues. And that's why this game is going to require to have player-generated content and possibly mods. Obviously, you don't want an empty package. You do want the developers to deliver a nice experience. So they would set the tone. They would do a series of levels showing all the different ways you can create a level and how you can put different emphasis on stealth, just straight up fighting, exploration, or even narrative. So now let's imagine our sci-fi or fantasy world. You jump into this game and you start by making your character. And once you get in, you actually check out yourself. If you wanted to be some brooding Hulk, sure, you can make your character larger in game, which you'll feel that once you get into VR, and you will be rewarded with that. Your character punches, strikes will be harder, and you would see that anytime you physically hit a character or attempted to break down a door. You could also do the inverse, where you decided to be a very small hobbit-like character, and you will be playing the game, you will be walking around at a much lower level. This is immediately a different game experience, and also it would give you the advantage of stealth. You also get the option of eyesight enhancements. Different races may have different eyesight abilities. You could also take that on the sci-fi edge. You're playing a cyborg character, so you get a HUD and a visual display that other characters don't see. Now, we've seen something like this in a minimal aspect in the Marvel video game, where if you played as Hulk, you were tall. If you played as Rocket, you were short, but that was about it. Let's take it to the next level. Ideally, what I'm describing here is an open-ended Dungeons & Dragons or sci-fi game such as Mass Effect. Immersion that keeps the character in the role that they are playing. VR-specific mechanics that have you pulling swords off your shoulder and magic wands and potions from your body. Varying character elements and environmental elements that emphasize the way you want to play. So in short, we need a role-playing game, guys. We need a deep role-playing game that doubles down on everything that makes VR great. Make me feel like the brooding barbarian half-orc or the sneaky little hobbit. And let me do it with some of my buddies, and let the millions of talented people out there create content for this game. It doesn't need to be a full-fledged MMO. Sometimes when you go to that level, you actually have to cut back on some mechanics just to accommodate the sheer scope and the number of players. We don't need that. You know, 4 players, 8 players. Keep it small like that. Keep it social, keep it fun. And above all else, immerse the player in that world. Alright, if you enjoyed the video, that's right guys, go ahead, give it a thumbs up, or at least if you made it this far, let me know you did, give me a thumbs up, leave your comments, and consider subscribing if you like this content. I will see you guys next time.